Welcome to Becoming Untriggered, a podcast brought to you by psychodynamic coaches and parents of three, Lavinia Brown and Andrew Lynn.
Together we normalise and unpack common challenges faced by couples and parents, explore how these could be symptoms of unprocessed trauma, and support you with the tried and tested tools for you to show up as the mum or dad, partner, and person you deserve to be. Welcome to Becoming Untriggered podcast. Today we're going to look at marriage counselling, couples therapy, and whether that actually exacerbates some of the reasons that you might use it, or whether it can help in some circumstances.
Yeah, we know some stats. So around half of marriages fail currently globally, unfortunately, and end in divorce. And marriage counselling is one of the things that people turn to try and prevent that. We went to marriage counselling probably 10 or 12 years ago, didn't have an amazing experience, which we can talk about. But also the people that tend to come to us are people that are not having success with marriage counselling. So we want to talk about some of the reasons why that might be. Maybe some of our listeners have been to marriage counselling and it hasn't worked. Maybe it's made the problems worse, like you said. So we want to talk about some of the reasons why that might be.
Yeah, so firstly, acknowledging that marriage is hard. By marriage, we're saying relationships. You know, lots of people are not married right now. We're not married. So we're saying marriage counselling in terms of just relationship therapy. Relationships are hard. Everyone knows that. But parenting adds that extra strain. Another stat that we came across is that 65% of people in relationships that are parents feel lonely. And that increases even more if you're a single parent. Whereas if you don't have children, only 55% of couples are lonely. So I think that's actually really significant. And I would imagine it's the responsibility and the overwhelm that comes with parenting and feeling like you are the custodian who needs to do the very best they can do with their children and do better than your parents did. That leads you to want that support. If you're single, you're not necessarily going to look for that support from your partner. Maybe you've got a network, maybe you don't. So you rely on yourself. But there's something about that isolation within the couple, which is really hard to bear.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think you do isolate yourself because you have a family and it's like all hands on deck. But then also the child that comes into your life brings up all of your baggage that you've been carrying around. So you get the isolation, but also you get the increased stress, increased tiredness, increased trauma, increased emotions, all of those things. And that's the thing that can often cause the wedge.
And perhaps putting too much emphasis on your partner to fix things either alongside you or for you. If you're not a parent, I don't think there's that expectation or that level of expectation from a partner. And if you're a single parent, maybe you are looking for support, but you're not in that very intense relationship dynamic with someone who's not your co-parent. This is why we do what we do, right? Becoming untriggered is about becoming less triggered as a parent and a partner, because in that combination, it's really hard. You've got literally the perfect storm
Without
of
doubt.
stress.
And I think a lot of my clients say to me, my wife or my partner changed a lot when we had kids. Well, she didn't really change. It was just isolation, stress, responsibility, and then all of the stuff starts coming up.
It's not a new word. It's a very old word. It's a very old term, actually. But matrescence is getting bandied around a lot on social media right now. It's become quite trendy. And that's how women change biologically when they become mothers. And yeah, of course, that's part of it. But what we're looking at is not flaming. When we give something a label, it's often because we're looking to blame something or someone. And that's why we're talking about marriage counselling today, because, okay, matrescence is part of it. Patriarchal society is part of it. Not having a village is part of it. Not being able to communicate is part of it. But in the end, you are the person that has to deal with that change, whether it's matrescence or something else. And hopefully your partner's also going to deal with that change. There's less pressure on a partner, on a man, I think, or the partner that goes out to work to change. But we have to look inwards. And I think that's one of the key issues that comes up when people go towards marriage counseling as a solution. I feel that often, and this is coming from qualitative experience, research, that people are looking to be told that they're right, that they are the person that hasn't done anything wrong or hasn't done anything to jeopardize the relationship, that they are a good person who is lovable and worthy. And if you're looking for that from outside of you, that's actually you looking for mummy or daddy to tell you that your brother or your sister was wrong and that you are right.
We were looking at some information from marriage counsellors, and they said a couple of the reasons why it doesn't work is when there's name calling and resistance to change. So that goes back to what you were saying, the desire to be right. So a lot of people that are in a relationship that isn't working thinks they're unhappy because the other person is making them unhappy. And that's why people get divorced, because they believe I'm with the wrong partner. If I change my partner, then I'll be happier because I'm okay. And then an extension of that is they say, okay, let's go to marriage counselling to see whether we can change you to make me happy. And then it's often this conflict, and it's often, like you said, about trying to get the counsellor on your side. Can you see how she's behaving? Can you see this? Oh yeah, the marriage counsellor agrees with me. And often we've experienced it ourselves, but often when we work with two people, we get both sides of the story, and both of the couples can come out of a marriage counselling session believing that the therapist confirmed their point of view.
But what does that say? It means that you're looking for external validation. Let's not forget that what we're talking about here is developmental trauma. And we're going to go back into why, if the root cause of your relationship issues are attachment or developmental trauma, then marriage counselling probably isn't for you. But just recapping on what developmental trauma is. Developmental trauma happens when your brain is developing in your early formative years. And pathways are laid down because they make sense and then they are confirmed. Your brain wants to be efficient above anything else. It wants to look for confirmation that a belief is true, not confirmation that that belief isn't true. If you think that, and have thought that for decades, you are not worthy, you don't deserve unconditional love, that you are not important, whatever those self-limiting beliefs are that were laid down in childhood, then you're going to go into therapy and probably come out of therapy with exactly the same self-limiting belief intact, unless you've gone back to where that belief was first laid down. So whilst a lot of relationship counseling deals with attitude, with communication, which can be super helpful, I'm not knocking that in any way, very, very helpful, you can't change that belief. You can't undo it and replace it with a more healthy one unless you've done the deep inner work.
Yeah, on your point, I think marriage counselling can only work if you're dealing with the problems and the challenges that are created, that have the inception in the relationship. So stuff like communication, maybe, conflict resolution, love languages, how to communicate between me and you, those types of things. But if the challenges that you're bringing in, like triggers, etc., that we can talk about, if they're rooted in attachment trauma, developmental trauma, if they're rooted in childhood, then most of the time, the tools that the marriage counsellor haven't got are not going to work. The biggest problem, like you said, is people resistant to change, not taking responsibility and name calling. But if you're going to take responsibility, or if you're going to encourage somebody to take responsibility within a therapeutic environment like marriage counselling, then you have to have the next step of that. They try and present a solution, which is within the relationship, when the problem more often than not started before the relationship.
I completely agree. And you could reframe that and say the same thing in a different way. I think a lot of the basis of a therapy session is often two people bringing up a recent argument or a recent
100%.
conflict. So that counsellor might talk about different ways to have approached that conflict, which are more understanding of the other person's perspective, which remove the name calling, the yelling, the disproportionate reaction. All great. Maybe you would be taught to speak more from the heart. However, if that conflict comes up because of the way you view yourself, the way that you feel you deserve attention from the other person or you want more, then of course that can't be tackled by the way that you communicate.
So let's just expand on that, because that's a really good point. When marriage counselling doesn't work, it's when one of two things: either the way you're feeling, the way you're presenting yourself is based on a limiting self-belief that's rooted in childhood. Then it doesn't matter what the other person's doing, you're always going to feel disrespected, or you're always going to be angry, or whatever it is. The second time that it doesn't work is when there's a trigger involved. Similar, but when there is an emotion that you had repressed in your body, probably before you even met this person. And this person is just like a mirror triggering this emotion. And actually, that's why you're probably attracted to that person, which we've talked about many times in the past. There is a trauma bond element of a relationship and attraction. And actually, that's a positive thing. If that's a positive thing, you want a solution that bears that in mind. And often marriage counselling just goes, well, you two are triggering each other. You're already bad for each other. And actually, you shouldn't be with each other. Whereas our view is, okay, well, you're triggering each other. You're holding a mirror up to each other's triggers. That's actually a good thing, because you should heal the root of this.
And one point that you made earlier about one of the reasons relationship counselling fails is resistance to change. But there are lots of aspects to that can very easily be traced back to childhood. If you feel familiar in a certain dynamic, however toxic it is, because that was what you lived through as a child, then that's not resistance to change. That's fear of the unknown. That's only feeling safe in what you know, which makes complete sense. So you've got to unpack that resistance. You can't just label something as resistance to change without understanding why that resistance might be there. And resistance is usually biologically normal. These are all unconscious patterns. And again, like you said, if a counselor or a therapist isn't aware of the effect of the past on the beliefs that you hold about yourself in the present, you're not going to get very far. Or you'll only get as far as you can get in terms of communication.
Yeah, it's a great point. And like you said, we attract the people that we believe we deserve to be with, etc., because of our neural pathways. If I don't believe I deserve love, and I'm attracted to you because you can't give me love, for example, and then I go to marriage counselling and say, this person is incapable of loving me, and the marriage counsellor goes, yes, that's right, you should get divorced. All that's going to happen is I get divorced from you with the same self-belief, the same vibration, the same rejection, the same anger, and I attract somebody else. It's the slightly different flavour, but it's still my problem, it's still my reality.
And actually, going back to why triggers are really healthy, I would argue that relationship issues only come up when actually you've evolved enough to be aware enough that your old coping mechanisms, trauma bond, whatever you want to call it, isn't working anymore. If you're both not aware, then however toxic that dynamic is, it's still serving you. It feels familiar and therefore safe in its toxicity. It's only one person evolves enough to realize that they no longer want to be in that role, that the issues come up. So actually, when you feel the need to have external input, as long as it's not coming from a need to be told that you're right, if that person is skilled enough to show you that this is a good sign that your coping mechanisms, your adaptive behaviors are old and you've grown out of them, this is an incredible opportunity for both of you to recognize why you came together and how you're going to relate from now on.
I'd be really interested actually to hear from people if they've been to marriage counselling and got this individual support that addresses the individual's root cause of the challenges they're bringing into the relationship. So If that's you, just leave us a comment down below.
Well, we certainly didn't have that, right?
No, we went to marriage counselling probably 10 years ago. Again, our challenges were right there here in the relationship. We'd done some work, but not quite enough. We were at breaking point, really.
Yeah, but bottom line, both of us were feeling unloved in the way that we needed. Both of us were feeling alone, back to this stat of aloneness. Our needs weren't being met in the way that we needed them to be. We hadn't yet become strong enough in our connection with our inner parent to get that sense of validation from within. So we were looking for it in the other person. I was wanting you to be more committed, more present, more there, to feel you more, to understand me more, to relate to me more. I wanted more.
From my point of view, I think I was looking for you to be more healed, more loving, more of the mother that I wanted to see, for me to fully commit, because I was scared. I was like, I'm with this woman, you know, there's lots of stuff I like about her, but I'm scared about what I'm seeing. I'm scared about this trauma. Can she love me? Can I love her? Is it safe to love her? Do I want to co-parent with her?
And that's what and I've spoken about this before in another episode, but that's what then prompted me to say in one session, but what kind of love are you looking for from me? I'm not your mother. I'm never going to be your mother. And then I remember saying to the counselor, can we look at that actually? And I was healed enough to say, I'd like to look at my relationship with his mother. I didn't say it was all your problem. I said, I would like to look at my resentment, I think, towards the relationship that you experienced, because it was so much more loving than what I'd ever known. And that triggered me a lot. And she said, I remember her saying, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, I'm triggered by my mother-in-law because their relationship's very different to what I experienced. I'd like to look at that and release some of this. I don't want to carry this. That's not really relevant. Like, no wonder. I think we only went to 2 more after that because we knew what we needed, but it wasn't available.
I remember the sessions, they were awful.
They were awful.
Some woman sitting in the corner, like in her chair. We were sitting on a couch.
And I don't really see how the format can work in many circumstances. Here you both are being brought into the headmaster's office. You are being encouraged to become the children that are wounded inside, who are already in the driving seat. Here's someone on the other side of a desk or in a big chair. They're all relaxed and laid back and cross-legged, and you're both on the edge of your seats waiting to be either told off for what you've done wrong or validated, and then you get a gold star. It's very like school.
I think it's a good point. I think that's where there is a lot of the resistance to change comes from the defensiveness that's caused by the environment you're in.
The key is there's no safety. There isn't the safety to create a relaxed body. When you're in a relaxed body, you can look at anything without those trauma responses coming into play, those defense mechanisms. You can be vulnerable. If you don't feel safe, forget it. It's going to take a long time. That's another thing. How can you possibly get anywhere in an hour? You can't. It will probably take an hour to feel safe.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's very different between the marriage counselling that we experienced and then the work we do is that when we did marriage counselling, there's no big picture. There's no, okay, you're going into the session. It's, okay, this is why you're experiencing this. This is normal. You're both reacting in exactly the right way, linked to your childhood. Okay, and we've got a roadmap of how we can heal these problems that are causing the challenges in your relationship. And it should take about this amount of time. And you're going to leave with all the tools you need to heal your own stuff, and then that'll create the difference in your relationship. And that creates another element of safety because you're like, oh, this person knows what they're doing. They understand why I'm in this position, and they've got a roadmap of how to get me out of it. And it's not my fault. And I'm normal. We're not bashing marriage counselling, and we're aware we've got a very skewed view on it. So our experience wasn't very good. And generally the people that come to us are the people that have had the awakening of, oh, it's not going to serve us. Probably because they've tried it. Some people have tried 3 or 4 marriage counsellors, hasn't worked. And that often prompts them to look at their own stuff because it's not as mainstream. So again, I want to say, if anybody has had success, or if anyone's a marriage counsellor, or if anyone wants to tell us of a different point of view, then please let us know. Send us a message, write a comment so we can just have a different experience.
Back to why individual work, I feel, is much more beneficial to the overall successful outcome of a relationship if you do it first. Many women come to me saying, I don't know whether to do marriage counseling first or this work first. And I always say, this work first, then by all means go and do marriage counseling. But if you're going into marriage counseling with an unhealed, wounded inner child who is looking for validation, if not from your partner, from the therapist, then that's not going to work. So just quick recap, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again because it's so important. Attachment trauma deals with attachment. There hasn't been a secure attachment in your past, or it hasn't been as secure as it could be. And that's what we teach people to do through a relationship with the inner parent, which is always secure because she's imaginary. Attachment trauma affects the way that you view yourself. You won't see yourself as worthy, as lovable, as important, as normal, as enough if you didn't have a secure attachment, which means unconditional love. It then affects the way that you view other people because you're going to be needy or dependent or passive aggressive or not able to let people in. It can manifest in various ways. And we're not talking just relationships. It's going to come across in your parenting. There's going to be power play. There's going to be neediness. There's going to be codependence with your children. Not healthy. It's also going to affect the way that you view the world. Is the world safe? Can you trust that the universe has your back, that things are going to be okay, that you are capable and that the people around you are on your side? So it's so fundamental. So unless you've looked at this attachment stuff, you're not really going to get anywhere by focusing exactly on, well, she said this and it was really rude. I found it really disrespectful.
Yeah, and the second part of attachment trauma is the side effect of that you come out of childhood with a load of repressed emotion. Because to not have your needs met, to not be securely attached to, the child goes through a process because they reflect everything back onto them. Okay, well, I'm not good enough to receive love. I'm not good enough to be seen. I'm not worthy of attention and affection. And that process, the trauma of that, leaves the baggage, the repressed sadness, the rejection, the grief, the anger. And then guess what? When your partner does that, when they're tired and you've got 3 small children, they leave the cupboard door open or they haven't done this, the repressed emotion of that child that didn't feel seen, the anger of that, comes out into that situation and is projected onto your partner. So again, the arguments, how many arguments in marriage counselling are of 2 inner children being triggered? I'd say 95%, but again, I might be wrong. You can't then solve the problem within the 2 adults. The problem needs to be solved with the healing and the integration of the inner children within each individual. And to do that, you need to safely release all of the emotion that you're carrying around and then heal the inner child.
In a relaxed body. And that ain't going to happen in a weekly session that's 60 minutes long.
Well, it's very unlikely that it'll even be addressed or acknowledged, and even more unlikely that it's going to be healed. And it's the same with parenting, like you said earlier. You can't go on to gentle parenting before you've released the pent-up anger from your childhood. You can't solve your marriage issues until you've dealt with the repressed emotion and your attachment trauma.
This 44% of marriages ending in divorce, this 77% of parents feeling lonely, it's the inner child that's feeling lonely. It's not adult you. Adult you's fine. It's the disappointment that has come from committing to someone else who you thought might be this knight in shining armor or whatever it is that you were expecting because of your childhood. And it turns out they're not. They're a flawed human being as well, just as your parents were. So it's a self-perpetuating cycle. You're going to be constantly disappointed by everyone, including your children, when they show you that they're not meeting your needs because they're not there to do that. Your partner's not there to do that. Your therapist is not there to do that. You have to do the work yourself.
In conclusion, first of all, let us know if you've had success with marriage counselling. Secondly, there's nothing wrong with trying marriage counselling. Yeah. Maybe it works. Maybe it's great. You do 5 sessions and your relationship is blossoming and incredible, and that's great. But if you've tried marriage counselling, if you think that triggers have something to do with the conflict and the problems in your relationship, or maybe your childhood, then it's worth investigating your childhood. It's worth finding somebody that's trauma-informed, finding somebody that's an expert in a child, finding somebody that you can create safety with, and going through that process, taking responsibility of what you brought into the relationship and healing that. And then you can look at the other person. If the other person hasn't done that and is not willing to do that, then yeah, you have got a problem with the other person. But until then, it's your responsibility to do the work.
If what we discussed was helpful, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. For more of the same, check out my social media, The Inner Child Healing Expert, or to work with me, go to laviniabrown.com.
You can find me on andrewlynn.net or Life Coach for Dads on Instagram. We work with both individuals and couples. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, please reach out. Thanks for listening.